Here are your Week 15 running backs. I've got the top 25 scrolling across the top of the screen during the entire show, and I'll talk about many of them, starting with Derrick Henry.
This is the Fantasy Football Show with your host, Smitty.
Top 5 running back. You're watching the Fantasy Football Show. I'm Smitty.
Take a lap. Derrick Henry, in my mind, is a lock for 120, 140 total yards and pretty much a lock for at least one touchdown. Has that double-digit touchdown potential every week. For weeks 15, 16, and probably 17. 17's weird. We'll address week 17 when it comes, what players could be sitting. I never, ever recommend that a league plays for week 17. It's ridiculous. It's an irresponsible move as a commissioner. If you have week 17 being played in your league, you need to make a vote and amend that for 2021. So Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, there's nothing to say here. They're in a tier by themselves. Christian McCaffrey, if he were back playing at full speed, he'd be in this tier as well. But it's a clear-cut two-player tier. Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry, they're both going to explode and carry people in weeks 15 and 16. The real debate kicks into gear around 3, 4, and 5 overall. Who's your number 3? Who's your number 4? For me, it comes down to Aaron Jones looking at, I think, a bunch of touchdown potential against the Carolina Panthers. He's a very touchdown-dependent player. If he doesn't get the touchdowns or the efficiency, he won't do well. He's not carrying the ball 25 times a game right now. This is what concerns me heading into 2021. And I think if Aaron Jones does happen to finish on a tear in weeks 15 and 16, does well during the playoffs, and you're able to get a lot for him in Dynasty or whatever, keeper league, I think you need to take full advantage of getting rid of Aaron Jones on the high. I think Aaron Jones holds a ton of risk heading into 2021, but that doesn't mean I don't like him for the remainder of 2020. You can like both, trading him in the offseason and starting him during the playoffs in weeks 15 and 16. I think he's capable of being a top 3 to 4, top 3 to 5 overall player in these 2 weeks coming up, but again, dump him if you can. And you can laterally trade into a much safer player. You could probably go get Ezekiel Elliott or a Barkley if Aaron Jones finishes on a tear. Now, if Aaron Jones struggles in weeks 15 and 16, good luck trading him in the offseason, and watch his value plummet heading into January, February, March, and get kind of worse. Why? Because of what I just said. He's a TD dependent player that doesn't get a ton of volume, and he has to be ultra efficient or he can let you down. People are going to be tired of the ups and downs with Aaron Jones heading into 2021 if he doesn't finish well in week 16 and week 15. But I do love him this week against the Carolina Panthers. I also love Alvin Kamara. Whether it's Taysom Hill, whether it's Breeze, we'll find out. If it's Breeze, that's good news for Kamara. What do we make of Kamara in 2021 if Breeze isn't there? We have some reason to be worried about getting top 1 to 2, 1 to 3 overall value because his PPR work's been yanked from him, yanked out of his kung fu grip. And will Taysom Hill start passing the ball to him in 2021 if Taysom Hill's a starter? We don't even know who's going to be the starter in New Orleans in 2021. It's kind of all up in the air, all over the map. It's going to make the offseason really, really fun in terms of ranking these guys, doing mock drafts. But for right now, I still love Kamara with or without Breeze. I love him a lot more with Breeze, but I still love him around the 4 to 5 range for running backs in week 15, week 16, because he's a playmaker. He's a guy that can get into the end zone. He can be very capable between the tackles if he needs to be. He can get you 100 total yards at a touchdown, even in a disappointing PPR environment. Nick Chubb against the Giants rounds out tier 2. I don't have Aaron Jones, Kamara, and Chubb in tier 1 because I think Henry and Cook are just, like I said, head and shoulders above the rest of the running backs for here on out. Jones could have 2 touchdowns and 100 yards on any given day, but we expect that out of Henry and Cook in weeks 15 and 16. That's what separates the 2 tiers. Chubb's kind of a risky player in tier 2. Hunt could outscore him. The Browns are very game script driven. If there's no need to run the football, Hunt's going to probably benefit more than Chubb will. But you got to run Chubb out there because he's your running back 1. Don't get cute during the playoffs. Don't try and predict game scripts and outthink this thing. Put Chubb in your lineup. Everyone's going to say, why is Jonathan Taylor in tier 3?
He should be in tier 2, Smitty.
Okay, look. 2 weeks ago, you were all ready to write him off. All of you were ready to write him off. Give him one solid game, and everybody's putting him in their top 5 running backs for the future. We did a dynasty mock draft last night on Smitty1.com. Get on over to Smitty1.com anytime you get lost. That's a short link to this YouTube show. But go to the homepage of my YouTube show, watch the recent mock draft video, and take a look at where Taylor gets drafted. He's all over the map. But Jonathan Taylor, in my opinion, we need to have a calm, cool head when it comes to where we slot the guy, not only for weeks 15 and 16, but especially for 2021. Am I optimistic he's a top 10 running back? Yes, I am. Am I going to put him up in the same tier with Aaron Jones, Kamara, and Chubb? No, I'm not. Not yet. Let him deliver another outing. Let him get through a game without fumbling the football twice in a row or something like that before we start taking one game and extrapolating it across 16. But I do like him against the Texans. I do think he'll be utilized. There's risk involved here. That's all I'm saying. But I do like him around the 6 to 7 overall range. I don't mind that value at all. I think Eckler could be just as risky at number 8 as Taylor. So he fits in really well in this tier 3 because tier 3 is loaded with a bunch of risk but high reward type players. James Robinson could have 125 and 2, or he could get you 7 points. Same thing with Sanders. He could have 150 yards and 2 touchdowns or 4 points. So very fitting to put Taylor at the top of that tier, but he is in that group of players. Same thing with Akers. We probably are looking at a player in Akers that could, I think, rank maybe around 7 or 8 overall. I have him 11 here, but you could put him anywhere in this range. We could literally put Montgomery, Akers, Swift, Hunt, Drake, Carson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. All of these guys, they belong in this tier together because you could put them in a blender, turn on the switch, and have a different order each time you do your rankings. Don't doubt the value and upside of Mike Davis with Kamara out of the lineup. Mike Davis is a guy that can punch in 2 touchdowns. We saw last week what he's capable of doing. He needs to be in all lineups, at least as a flex conversation. I get it if you've got stacked running backs 1 and 2, but you need to have a flex conversation about Mike Davis in week 15. Clyde Edwards-Helaire could be number 7, or it could be 20. We don't know. He's very volume dependent. He's at the mercy of how the Chiefs are going to deploy their running back and game script, and he's not a guy lacking talent. I hate seeing people say that Clyde is no good. Clyde's never going to be good. Those people don't watch football. Clyde Edwards-Helaire looks fantastic every time he's on the field, every time he's being utilized. It's all about usage. Usage is part of the problem. It's part of the value. You can't separate situation from player. So we have to accept that Clyde Edwards-Helaire has risky, volatile value, very dependent on how the coaching staff wants to use him or if they use him at all. That doesn't mean he lacks talent. Stop talking about his talent being lacking. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, if given 22 carries in week 15, could have 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. So get off his back. But I'm ranking him cautiously optimistic, putting him in this tier 3, but letting you know he could rise up to number 7 tomorrow morning if the wind blows a certain way. Now, tier 4, I have Elliott atop of that tier. You could put Elliott in tier 3. I almost feel like I should bump him in there. Jacobs has the talent, but he clearly is a head case. If you didn't follow what happened between Jacobs and I on Instagram, I called him out. I called him out because Jacobs, right before the game, he put an Instagram story up that said, "Sorry, I'm not playing." And then he said, hot fantasy owners out there. And then if you zoom in on his Instagram post, he gives the bird to all of his followers and says, "F your fantasy." Now, a lot of you are going to say, "Smitty, no player cares about your fantasy football. Fantasy football is not important to them." Let me set you straight for a second. Fantasy football fans and all fans deserve more respect. Because without the fans, without the popularity surrounding the players in the game, those players wouldn't make a dime. Those players wouldn't be famous. Those players couldn't command the contracts that they have. So stop with your whole everybody's crying, no players care about your fantasy. We help make the players who they are. Without the fans, who I want to inform you, NFL players, your fan base is about 50% fantasy football based these days. And if you're going to ignore or disrespect your fans, you're going to lose popularity, which is going to affect your contract, your jersey sales, and it's going to hurt your ability to go get a bigger contract when the time comes. I don't want to hear how we're crying and complaining. Am I complaining about a player saying, oh, I'm not worried about fantasy, I'm just out there to win the game? No, that's a very, very common way players dismiss fantasy, and it's not that big of a deal. We don't complain about that kind of commentary. But when you flip off your followers, it's a very, very different situation. So please don't tie in the, oh, players don't care about fantasy, get off their back, let them live their lives. He instigated this whole mess by flipping off his following. I called him out on it. He blocked me on IG, and I'm actually proud of that. I'm proud. For the first time, I'm proud that a player blocked me on social media because he doesn't deserve my follow. And I stand by me calling him out. He deserved to be called out. You don't flip off your followers. You don't trick your fans into thinking you're not playing. And for those that didn't follow this, he played. He went out and warmed up and played the game. He was tricking his own following because he's mad about the fantasy football comments that come his way. Guess what? That's part of your job. The fans are a part of your job. So stop complaining about, oh, my fans bother me about my fantasy football stats, and stop tricking your own following. If you're following Jacobs, it's because you like him. His own followers, he gave the bird to and tricked them into thinking he wasn't playing. People pulled him out of their lineups. Some people lost. Some people won. Some people subbed in Miles Sanders because they thought Jacobs wasn't playing and they won their week. Thank you, Jacobs, for saving a lot of fantasy owners. Thank you, Jacobs, for saving a lot of fantasy owners from your pathetic performance that you dropped in week 14. You might as well not have played. In fact, I don't know if you did because you didn't do anything. I try and stay positive toward players. I don't rant and rave about a lot, but it really irked me, and I don't even own him. Not in one league. I may have drafted him in one or two leagues and traded him because I didn't like the way his career was looking heading into the middle part of the year. I dumped that guy real quickly. I have really not a lot of faith in his dynasty value, but I have no stock in this. My emotion and reaction came to defend my followers, the guys and girls that put their faith in Jacobs and got extremely disappointed. The disrespect he showed the fantasy football community was crazy. And what's even more alarming are the people that go to his defense and act like he's just dismissing fantasy football. I'm focused on the game. That is not what this is right here. This is blatant disrespect for fans and people that help make those players make the money they make. Yes, we do have a big part in why players make a ton of money. Dobbins could be hit or miss. I have him ranked at 20. Connor, same thing, hit or miss. Gallman, he disappointed last week, but I think he still has good upside. Jones, I probably have Jones ranked a little low here. I'll admit that. McKissick is a PPR giant, but he can vanish or, emerge. Hines, probably worthy of even a higher ranking than that. But that's my top 25 running backs heading into week 15. Hopefully I can do a wide receiver and QB and tight end show here, but I wanted to bring you that show. Get ready for more. Follow me, subscribe, follow, tell your friends, tell your grandma, tell everybody, and get on over to sleeperu.com for your bold predictions, your rankings, and get on over to heysmitty.com if you want to order a phone call later.
This is the Fantasy Football Show with your host, Smitty.
Running back. You're watching the Fantasy Football Show. I'm Smitty.